ability to develop and grow. There is another aspect of Buddha nature that all beings have, and these are, it's called they call it in Buddhism, they call it the five Buddha wisdoms, but it's actually a kind of a nature that all beings, all conscious beings have. Ants, chickens, humans, they all have this. We all have it. So the first is what they call a mirror-like, you could say a mirror-like awareness. And when they're referring to a Buddha, they call it a mirror-like wisdom. But it's a mirror-like awareness, which means all conscious beings can take in everything, like everything that is around them. We can take it all in. We can take in all the sounds at once, the sights at once. It's like a mirror. It just can take it all in. Whether you're, and this is true of all sentient beings within their realm, how they exist. There's a second one, and this is it needs some explanation. It's called the awareness of equality. And what this means is that we are able to see things as being, we can categorize them into an equal category. For instance, I can look at the couch here, the chair there, this armchair, and I can say these are equally all pieces of furniture, right? A chicken, and I know about chickens because we've been living with them for over a year now. A chicken can see a branch like this, or it can see a piece of wood that's up a little high, or anything like that, and it will go, oh, in its own way, piece of furniture. This is something that I can roost on, and a chicken automatically does this. It automatically knows it. The chickens we got did not have a mother. They just came fresh out of the egg and were amazed by what we would call instinct, but we could also call that nature. So there's this ability that all conscious beings have to put things into categories, equal categories. A worm can do it, an ant can do it, chickens can do it, people can do it. The Buddha does it. The third, another one is we're able to have what they call discriminative awareness, which means we can then look at the specific characteristics of any particular thing and know what it is. So know the characteristics of it. For instance, a chicken can look at a leaf and it can look at a bug, and it's going to know, and I know this, they just automatically do it. It's going to know that the bug is food and the leaf might be food, but it might not be food. It tries it out. If it's not food, it won't eat it. It knows, it can see the characteristics of different things. We can do that as well. I mean, it's quite clear that we're able to do that. We see the specific characteristics of things. There is another aspect which is called the awareness of accomplishment. And we naturally know how to do things. For instance, a chicken, without anybody telling them anything at all, knows how to clean its beak by scratching it on a hard surface. It knows how to dig with its claws to look for food. It knows how to get up and perch. It knows how to take a dust bath. It knows how to clean itself. It knows how to do things. We also, as humans, know how to do things. We know how to use our hands, our arms, how to eat, how to sleep, you name it. Of course, we learn some of these things, but we have the ability to accomplish, to do things. This is something every consciousness has. And then the final one is they call it the sphere, in Buddhism, they call it the sphere of truth. But it would be knowing your sphere of existence. We are aware as humans of our sphere of existence. We know that we live on this planet. We know the way it is. There are houses, trees, atmosphere. It's in the part of the solar system. It's in a galaxy, in the cosmos. We are aware of our sphere of existence. A chicken is aware of its sphere of existence. Where it lives. It knows what its coop is. It knows its fellow chicks. It knows what predators are. It's aware of its sphere of existence. And this is the same for every conscious being.
Can you just, the difference between the second one and the third one?
What was the second one? The equality,
Yeah.
the awareness of equality. We have an ability to categorize
To
things.
see that some things aren't like another.
That's right. And
But
some things are
how's that
alike.
different from the
No,
third
no,
one?
some things are alike. So like this is all furniture, or you could say these are all chairs, you know. But then there's the one where you can discriminate the specific characteristics. This is a burgundy chair made of faux leather. This is a chair with flower design on it. It's a different style. We have that ability to distinguish the specific characteristics of something. I mean, do you understand the
Well, I
difference?
think probably it's more like these are man-made objects.
You could do that too. You could say everything in here is a man-made object,
Yeah,
right?
I'm just trying to.
And that's the wisdom of
I want to
the
get super.
awareness of the
pinpoint
quality.
clear.
The word equality is kind of weird. It doesn't. It's really the awareness of being able to categorize.
Some things aren't like others.
Yeah, some things aren't like other things, and some things are
So
like
the
other
problem
things.
comes in when you start throwing out examples that can make it
Yeah.
less clear.
So when we get to
Thanks.
so this is what they call our Buddha nature. This is a nature that can develop and grow if we were able to accumulate enough positive potential by, removing all of our afflictive emotions, growing our loving kindness, our compassion, our, our ethical behavior. At the same time, growing our wisdom to a level that is unimaginable to us right now, but it is possible because of this nature that we have. So, for instance, when you take a Buddha and you take these 5 characteristics, you have the wisdom, mirror-like wisdom, which can take in everything. Well, the Buddha can take in the entire complete universe, all of it. This is something we can't do. We cannot do that yet. We haven't reached that level of wisdom or the capacity for that. Then you go to the wisdom of equality. From a Buddhist point of view, things are equal in that all sentient beings want to be happy, and all sentient beings don't want to suffer. This is from the Buddhist point of view of categorizing and saying this, they are all alike this way. We don't do this yet, not really. Then the other is all sentient beings, all conscious beings have the ability to grow and become enlightened, completely enlightened. This is the way the Buddha uses this, and they call it a wisdom, the wisdom of equality with the Buddha. Then there's the wisdom of discrimination, that the Buddha, the specific characteristics. So from a Buddhist point of view, the Buddha can look at a particular sentient being and know exactly what all of their past lives were, know exactly what their karma is. And so like that, they're able to discriminate in that way. Then the wisdom of accomplishment for a Buddha would be knowing what the karma is of every single being, knowing their past lives. The Buddha knows exactly the kind of thing to say, how to teach that individual, what to do that is going to help that individual to make those steps, step by step along the path all the way to enlightenment. And the final is this wisdom of the sphere of truth. And the Buddha has a direct, non-conceptual realization of the nature of reality. So the Buddha sees what we call the emptiness of everything. The Buddha is aware of the emptiness of everything. Everything exists as a dependent arising. It doesn't exist independently from its own side. These are just concepts that we have right now. We have not had a direct experience of this. The Buddha has had a direct experience of this, and the Buddha also has this altruistic intention to benefit all sentient beings. And this is how the sphere of truth works with the Buddha. So the Buddha is omniscient. So this is what our Buddha nature is. It has the ability, we have the ability from the lowliest conscious being that we can think of all the way to higher beings such as humans to achieve enlightenment. But don't get confused. It doesn't mean that a worm in one lifetime can become a Buddha. That's not how it works. There is a series of, it's evolution, as I said before, there's this evolution. We go through series of lifetimes after lifetime after lifetime since beginningless time. And we have gradually develop. And we develop really based on, it's hard, it's difficult to recognize this, but it's due to suffering that we actually start to turn in another direction. We get tired of the suffering and we start to grow and change very gradually. So according to Buddhism, we've all been everything. Since beginningless time, we've been all kinds of life forms. And according to Buddhism, the best kind of life to have in order to attain Buddhahood is what there is called a precious human life. And that means that we have, as a human being, we have the mental capacity to understand the Buddhist teachings, to follow them, to practice them. And we also have the right combination of suffering and non-suffering so that we aren't complacent, that we actually we make the effort to do this. Another being such as if you were, and that's a precious human rebirth. It's different than just any human rebirth. For instance, if you were born in a war zone and were starving and all you had to, the only thing you could think of was how to survive, you do not have what is called in Buddhism a precious human rebirth. You have too much suffering. There's too much suffering. You can't do it. You need the right combination. Or if you're in even as a human, if you're born into some, I don't know, some kind of existence where you had everything you wanted. You're wealthy family. You got everything you wanted. You didn't have to worry about anything. You wouldn't have no motivation to practice the Dharma. You'd worry about keeping your money or keeping your power or whatever it may be.
Whether or not you have the right color.
All of that kind of stuff. And we all have those kinds of worries too, to various degrees. But if we had so much pleasure and wealth that we wouldn't even want to think about the Dharma. So it's this particular balance of suffering and non-suffering as a human being with a mental capacity, or a being that would be equivalent to a human. I don't know, in some other universe that's equivalent to what a human is. Yeah. So that is the Buddha nature. And as human beings, we have this rare opportunity to grow that Buddha nature now and make a decision to go forward on this path. So now I think, I want to show the screen again about, this has to do with the winds and the channels. So can you all see that? Well, no, you sitting here can't see it, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I can.
So this is a diagram of what I was talking about last week. And when we do these breaths,
Can
you share the
you
link to
just
that?
like
Turn it
a
around.
second?
okay, everybody, you get to see. So you see, there is a central, you see the little things that look like a mustache on the figure? Well, that's the air. That's the air flowing in through the nostrils. And if you recall, I said last week that the mind rides on these energy winds like a rider would ride on a horse. The consciousness rides on the winds. The winds are not actual air, but they are related to it, and they use the air to flow. So you breathe in through the nostrils, and this energy, these energy winds.
You can.
Yeah,
share
okay.
that. Thank you.
Okay.
You can put the link on the
Yeah.
site, that would be great.
So if you notice, there's a central channel that is blue that runs all the way down from the crown of the head to the base of the spine, or you could even say the root of the sex organ. There is a right on the right side. There is a white channel on the left side of the individual. On the left side, there is a white channel. On the right side, there is a red channel. As we're looking at it, it's
Can I just
opposite.
ask,
Yeah.
interrupt you? Does this relate to Buddha nature?
It's going to relate to the opening meditation that we do.
Okay.
It's relating to opening meditation. And you can see there are energy centers at the crown, at the throat, at the heart, at the below the navel, and at the sex organ. And these are called chakras, energy wheels. And these channels go down either side of the energy wheel, and they cross at each energy wheel. They kind of knot at each energy wheel. And then you can also see they're little, looks like little veins going throughout the entire body. Those are the minor channels that the energy winds flow through. So when we're doing this breathing exercise, you can sort of, remember this and visualize this. Okay, now I will stop share. Okay.
Okay, so the first business about Buddha nature was a pep talk. Sort
The
of.
first business about Buddha nature is why can we actually do this? Because we have the nature to do it, but it does not mean we are already a Buddha.
So those
Sometimes you
five-
hear that.
Those 5
Yeah, those,
consciousnesses or wisdoms.
they call them wisdoms, yeah. But they're kind of natures. You
That's
could
how
say
we
natures.
connect to.
That's how we can do it. And plus, we have that clear light mind, which is able to grow. There's an expansive quality to it because the clear light mind is combined with this very subtle physical energy.
I know this isn't what you had planned, but so would you say that the path towards being a Buddha is lifetime after lifetime refining those 5 wisdoms? So, each of those become more elevated in terms of their subtlety and their intention and their use.
Yeah, of course. And it's also,
Is that more or less
yeah,
the process?
yeah. But we also we have to, the problem we have are these afflictive, disturbing emotions that we have to apply the antidotes to those. We have to remove those. We have to develop all of our good
The
qualities.
afflictions, it seems like, would be contaminating those 5 wisdoms and
Absolutely,
actually
absolutely.
retarding their development.
Yeah, and they contaminate our ability to grow our wisdom as well. So this is why this is working with these destructive emotions is really important. So we're going to do this. This is a second visualization, which includes more of the preliminary practices. And
Can I just say one thing
Yeah.
that I found real interesting and practical that just was a like bing moment was that the eyes is where the mind goes and the breath is how you can control that a little bit by holding the breath or by doing certain breathing. The wind flowing through the channels stops and you're there in that moment. And so it made Shine, what do you call it? Shine? Single point,
Single point of concentration.
Yeah, it made Shine make so much sense to me because you're breathing very relaxed and you're not focusing really on anything except for the space in front of you. So you're in that perfect mode then of the eyes go wherever the eyes go, the mind goes. If you look at something, you can't help but think of it or engage in it. So you're not kind of focusing on anything. So you're helping that part of the butt channel to calm down. And you're trying to just slow down your breathing because that's what it rides on. So it just made practical sense to me suddenly after a million years. That's why you do that, to calm those winds and to not focus on your mind eyes on certain things, to disengage that to be there, to just like be open and be there. Yeah.
I mean, I've often found it's really interesting with Buddhism how long it can take for us to finally get something which seems like we should have gotten it years ago, but
Yeah, missed that bit, and then you're kind of fluffling around for a while, wondering why the hell am I doing this? And it all fits in. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we're going to do this 9.9 cycle of 9 breaths, which actually serve to basically calm the mind down and get it into a neutral state. And so if you recall, you start breathing And you breathe in, you imagine that you're breathing in, say, through your right nostril, and that it goes up the right channel, up to where the crown is, comes down along the right side of the central channel, goes all the way down to the base of the spine. And then with your out breath, you're bringing it up the opposite side. And you're bringing it up to the crown and out the opposite nostril. So you do that 3 times. Let's just do that 3 times. And imagine the flow of that air with the in-breath and the out-breath. Then you just reverse it. Start with the opposite nostril and out the opposite nostril. Now breathe in through both nostrils, go down either side of the central channel. When you reach the base of the spine, bring both of these wind energies up through the central channel and up to the very top of your crown and out through the top of the hip. Now we'll move on to visualizing the merit field, which is very similar to the initial visualization last week. Imagine in the space in front of you a clarity, a radiant clarity. Think of this radiant clarity as the consciousness, the mind of an enlightened being that is reaching out to you, communicating with you. As you breathe in this awareness of this enlightened being communicating with you. As you breathe out, you're reaching out and communicating with the enlightened being. So do this a few times. Now imagine that a very subtle energy begins to form at the center of this clear radiance. And like light being refracted through a prism, there are 5 stainless colors that begin to emanate: blue, white, red, yellow, and green. These are very subtle life-supporting energies. And these colors begin to form the figure of a Buddha as if it were made of rainbow light, radiant, clear, the Buddha is seated on a magnificent platform of light. On top of that magnificent platform of light is a multicolored lotus. In the middle of that multicolored lotus are two discs of light, like flat, round pennies maybe, but they're cushions that the Buddha is sitting on. And the first disc of light is red, and the second disc of light is white. And the Buddha is seated on these two cushions in the center of the lotus on this magnificent platform of light. The Buddha represents our guide, our spiritual friend. The Buddha is one with the Guru. If you have a Guru, see this Buddha as your Guru in the form of the Buddha. If you do not yet have a guru, see this Buddha as your Guru. The Guru Buddha is your guide. The Guru Buddha is like, if you want to travel an unknown pathway, if you have someone who has traveled that pathway before, then they can guide you successfully to your destination. Emanating from the Buddha, there is a resonance or a vibration, which is very healing. And as it enters your body, there's a sense that all blocks and obstacles are being removed. This resonance, this vibration, this sound, this is the Dharma. These are the pathways of consciousness that lead us step by step by step, gradually, to full enlightenment. Imagine surrounding the Buddha and riding on these pathways of resonance, the Dharma, are beings of light. They range from very highly realized beings, such as Arya beings, who have had direct realizations of the nature of reality, of emptiness, who have not yet achieved Buddhahood, all the way down to monks and nuns who are with us, and our fellow travelers along the path, our Dharma friends. This all represents the Sangha that help us along the way, along the path. Now, if you recall last week, I had us visualize us being surrounded by countless sentient beings. In this visualization, which is the 7-limb practice, you visualize yourself front and center, and then on either side of you and behind you, in numbers as vast as the atoms throughout the universe, are your past incarnations since beginningless time, all of the various consciousness and form that you have inhabited since beginningless time, which has led you to where you are right now. The way to think about this, one way to think about this is that if you think about just this life, the life that you're living now, and you think about your earliest memories when you were maybe even an infant or a toddler, 4 or 5 years old, 10 years old, 15, up to early adulthood, all the way to now. You hold all of this in your mental continuum. This is where it actually abides. And these memories that you have, this mental continuum that you have, has created propensities in you, habits of thinking, of acting, of speaking. So have this sort of unpack on either side of you, all these parts of yourself that you can remember since you were born. You hold these as propensities within you right now. They don't actually exist now. You are not that person anymore, but you're holding these propensities in your mental continuum. This is exactly the same thing we're doing with our previous lives. Even though we don't remember them, we are holding those propensities as part of our mental continuum. So you visualize yourself now in all of these forms, prostrating 3 times to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. As you take safe direction in the guidance from the Buddha, safe and sure direction in the path that the Buddha leads you on, and safe and sure help from the Sangha. And visualize that all of your aspects of yourself, countless as the atoms throughout the universe, prostrate 3 times with a sense of connection, gratitude, and humility. The next part of the 7 limb practice is called offering. And here imagine that every part of yourself, since beginningless time, is now making an offering to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And imagine that every part of yourself, including your current sense of now who you are, makes the most beautiful offering you can imagine. It may be flowers, whatever it is, whatever each part of yourself wants to offer. Imagine that there are oceans, waves of offering coming and going to the Buddha, who accepts them happily and joyfully. Then imagine that you're offering all the parts of yourself that have brought you to where you are right now, are now offering your intention to follow this path that the Buddha is guiding you on. The Sangha is helping you along the way, to follow it for as long as it takes until you reach enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And you offer that thought. Visualize it as in a globe of light, and that offering goes into the heart of the Buddha, who accepts this with great joy. The next part of the 7 limb practice is traditionally called confession, but it really is it's a kind of a purification practice. And it has 4 aspects to it. They are called the four R's. And they are regret, reliance, remedy, and resolve. And these are 4 what they call opponent powers. So the first, regret, you think, I regret all my afflictive anger, any hatred and malice. I regret having engaged in it. I regret all of my craving desire, my afflictive attachment, lust, greed. I regret having engaged in this. I regret my arrogant pride that places myself above all others and looks down on some. I regret having done this. I regret my envy and jealousy, which makes me resent others. And I regret my ignorance, which takes the form of active misconceptions about the nature of myself and the nature of all phenomena. All of these regrets that I regret first of all because they are disturbing to me. They harm me. They limit my ability to connect with others, to empathize with others, and to benefit others. They also harm others, and I regret any way that I have harmed others because of these afflictive emotions. It's as if I have taken poison, and I want to find the antidote for this poison, because it is the result of these afflictive emotions, is that I engage in negative actions of body, speech, and mind, which harm myself and harm others and cause me to be bound to this cyclic, seemingly endless cyclic existence of birth, aging, temporary happiness, disappointment, dissatisfaction, suffering, sickness, and death. And I want to stop this. So that is the first opponent of power, of regret. And it's very closely related to what in Buddhism is called renunciation. We often think that renunciation, when we hear the word renunciation, it thinks, oh my God, I'm gonna have to give up all the things I like, the way Venerable Rabina says, I'm gonna have to give up my sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And what we're giving up are these harmful, afflictive emotions that cause so much trouble for us. And this ignorance, this misunderstanding, active misunderstanding of the nature of reality and the nature of self and of phenomena. That is what we're renouncing. That is what we're giving up. We are not giving up pleasure. The Buddha there's nothing wrong with pleasure. We're giving up what's causing all of the problems. That's what renunciation is. And we have to develop this kind of renunciation before we can ever have any kind of stable compassion for others. Our compassion will be unstable as long as we have these particular afflictive emotions and as long as we have this ignorance about the nature of self and phenomena. So this is what we have to work on. If we want to be of benefit to others, we must work on this. So then we go to the next opponent power, which is called reliance. And there are two reliances here. One, we rely on the gurus, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha for a safe direction, safe guidance, and sure help along the pathway to enlightenment. Two, we rely upon other sentient beings, friends, enemies, and strangers in order to develop all of our good qualities. We cannot develop loving compassion. We cannot develop kindness. We cannot develop patience. We cannot develop ethics if we can't practice with other sentient beings. It cannot be done in a vacuum. As a matter of fact, if you think about it, the whole reason for becoming enlightened is to benefit other sentient beings. So we rely on other sentient beings. The next opponent power is the power of remedy. And here the remedy, the ultimate remedy is the Dharma itself, is the pathways of consciousness themselves. And so in order to practice this, to take this remedy, this is the antidote to the poison, in other words. In order to take this remedy, we need to study the Dharma, go to teachings on the Dharma, read books on the Dharma, contemplate the Dharma, meditate upon the Dharma until the Dharma becomes part of our mental continuum. And that at any moment, at any time, we have this at our fingertips as a remedy for when any kind of problem occurs. The Dharma is right there, and we know what solution is. We know what to do. This is the remedy. Then the final opponent power is the power of resolve. This has also two aspects to it. One is we resolve going forward that I will not engage in any of these afflictive emotions. At least I will keep my mouth shut and my hands to myself. I mean, we may feel some of these afflictive emotions, but we have to start engaging in controlling them. So there's a sense of control here, that we're going to apply opposing forces, the power of remedies or opposing forces to these afflictive emotions. The other aspect of this, of resolve, is that we resolve to grow our good qualities. We resolve to practice step by step to understand the nature of the self, to understand the nature of phenomena, to understand what emptiness is, to work on our wisdom. So these all together form what is called the four opponent powers. So the next step of the seven limb practice is rejoicing. And here what we're rejoicing in is the good qualities of all holy and ordinary beings. So we're rejoicing in the fact that there is such a thing as a Buddha. We're rejoicing that the Buddha wants to benefit us and help us. We're rejoicing that there is the Sangha, these fellow travelers along the way who we can rely on, who will support us, who will help us. We rejoice in qualities. Think of somebody who you admire, who you greatly admire. You rejoice in those qualities. This is very important to do because it stops us from being, becoming jealous, from having envy when we see somebody with good qualities. It is a antidote to envy. And they say it's the easiest way. The teachers say this rejoicing aspect is the easiest way to develop our positive potential, to develop merit. All we have to do is to rejoice in others' good qualities. The next part of the seven limb practice is, it's a request that we make to the Buddhas to remain until samsara ends, to not leave us, to take us all the way to enlightenment. And this is an antidote for when we have in the past, it does occur when we can find fault with our spiritual teacher, or we can, find fault with our spiritual teacher. This can occur. And this is an antidote to that we ask them to remain until samsara ends. The next limb of the seven limb practice is another request. And request our gurus and the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma, to continue to turn the wheel of Dharma, to continue the teachings. And this is an antidote to when we sort of fall off the path. We sort of let go of our spiritual practice. Other things get in the way and we don't do it as consistently as we would want to. And this, we request them to continue to turn the wheel of Dharma. And the final is we dedicate any merit that we've generated in this practice to the benefit and the enlightenment of all sentient beings. So we generate the merit that all of us here today have made. We visualize that this merit is then goes to this merit field, the heart of the Buddha, where it is stored as if it's protected like in a bank. But instead of paying interest, you actually gain. And you will not lose this merit if you dedicate it to this particular cause, the enlightenment of all sentient beings. Next, we move on to a mandala offering.
May I
Yeah.
interject?
Yeah.
Because this sort of like how Susie was like, oh, I get it, what she was talking about, single point. I recently, in doing this 7-limb practice, had one of those ahas, which was the whole formula, really the whole point of the whole formula is to ensure that you maintain your connection with the Dharma and specifically the teachers. So all those, the prostrations, the offerings, the confession, the target, you're doing that as your guides, as the witness, so that they will, until you are enlightened. You're basically throwing yourself at their mercy. 7-limb practice is an act of throwing yourself at the mercy of the teachers who are helping you transform by conveying the Dharma to you.
Mm-hmm.
It can be really lost in the shuffle of all the details of this 7-phased thing. But if you step back from it and go, what is this? It's, you're throwing yourself at the mercy. The whole point of it is please remain until samsara ends, the 5th and the 6th.
Right.
Limbs are the whole point of the
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4, first 4 limbs.
Right.
And, otherwise we would not make progress.
We would
Otherwise
not
we would circle in samsara
forever. We would not have.
So I just want to point that out about the 7-limb practices, that it's, because of the terminology and the format and it can be lost in all the details of it, that what you're essentially doing is it's a proven formula to throw yourself at the mercy of the teachers of the Dharma, and that it's the appropriate series of thoughts that bond you to that lineage.
Yeah, I think it can bring you to the understanding that there is no way we could ever attain happiness, liberation, and enlightenment without the Buddhas, without the gurus, without the teachers, and without the teachings. There's just no way. And so I think it strengthens. It really, if you practice this on a fairly regular basis, it really strengthens your sense of connection with your guru, with the Buddhas themselves, with other beings. I mean, it really can strengthen that. And it's powerful when it's practiced regularly. It grows. So we're going to close with a mandala offering. And this is, here what we do is we imagine, and however way we want to imagine this, a completely purified universe where all beings are completely free from all afflictive and disturbing emotions. All conscious beings have had a direct experience of what the nature of the self and phenomena of emptiness. They've had this direct experience, and all beings have reached enlightenment. So it's not only the consciousness, but it's also the manifestation and the appearances of the universe. So you imagine a completely purified universe. And so you visualize this. I will chant the Tibetan chant that goes along with this. Zaji perki jokshin me sho tram ri rab ling ji ni de gen pa di sangye jing tu mi de wa Rokun amdakshina chakasho. And then you offer this, and it goes into the heart of the Buddha as you say these words, Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayam. And that concludes this opening meditation that is part of the 6 preparatory practices. So what we covered last week was the basically what afflictive emotions are, is that the difference between the way we think about emotions as being good ones are pleasurable and bad ones are painful. According to Buddhism, it's that an afflictive emotion is that which is destructive, and a non-afflictive emotion is one that is beneficial. So it doesn't mean, it could mean that something like, and then His Holiness went through a list that there are many instances where anger actually can be beneficial, where attachment can be beneficial. I mean, without attachment, we wouldn't have the closeness that we have of relationships. We wouldn't have families. We wouldn't have the friends we have. We wouldn't have the Sangha. That attachment is a good thing. It's only when the attachment becomes afflictive, tries to control, is grasping and craving, that it can become destructive. There's an energy with anger that can occur where there's a boost of energy where you're going to get something done. You know, there can be an anger that you have when you see harm being done to another, and you have this energy to help. Anger can be productive in that way. It can be beneficial in that way. It's harmful when it generates into malice and hatred, and the same with the other there's the envy, the envy and jealousy, the doubt, the pride, the arrogant pride. There are good aspects of those things, and there are negative aspects of those things, or I should say, there are beneficial and there are detrimental aspects. So then we discussed there's like the family of emotions. So you have there's the anger family, which is the hatred, the malice. There's the attachment family, which is the craving, desire, the lust, the greed. There is a envy family, which is jealousy and envy. These all have aspects of attraction and aversion. These other families, the doubt, the envy, the arrogant pride. These are all the families of emotions. So we talked about that, and now he's going into what we do. How do we deal with these? So the first, this is he says the heading is taking a stance. In order to go about dealing with these destructive emotions, it is first of all necessary to adopt a general attitude or stance toward them, a stance of opposition. Such a stance involves recognizing that the law of opposition, whereby positives cancel out or neutralize negatives, applies not just to the physical world, but also to our inner or mental world. In the great wisdom traditions, we find clear lessons both on the mental states that are to be tackled and on the need to cultivate and deploy their antidotes. If no opposing forces exist for our destructive emotions, then there is nothing we can do about them. However, if opposite positive forces do exist, then they can become powerful antidotes. For example, the main antidote for anger is forbearance, for greed is contentment, for fear is courage, and for doubt is understanding. A key element in generating an effective stance of opposition toward negative emotions is a deep recognition of their destructive nature and a conviction that we both can and should strive to overcome them. This conviction can then serve as the basis for an enduring resolve to tackle them. We can develop this element of the general stance by giving attentive, compassionate consideration to the destructive effects these emotions have upon the lives of ourselves and those around us. We can reflect on the fact that such emotions, hatred and greed, for example, not only are the sources of many of our personal problems, but also are the ultimate sources of many of our collective problems, such as war, poverty, and environmental degradation. Simply adopting a stance of opposition toward our destructive emotions will have an immediate influence by giving us a sense of caution, which is a critical defense when such powerful emotions strike us. So it's very important to give careful consideration to the negative impact of each of our most persistent destructive tendencies. If our mind is lost, even for a short time, to an emotion as destructive as hatred, we may say and do terrible things. The damage created by one moment of intense hatred can be devastating. In Buddhism, the human mind is often compared to a wild elephant. As some farmers know well, when an elephant is agitated, it can wreak havoc, great destruction. But an unruly, agitated human mind, given to fits of rage, malice, obsessive craving, jealousy, or arrogance, can wreak even more destruction than a rampaging elephant and can ruin lives. To counter these tremendously powerful destructive emotions we all have within us, we need to develop very strong enthusiasm and determination for the task. This enthusiasm will come in large part from considering the negative impact of those emotions. In addition to being powerfully destructive in moments of intense feeling, they can also have an insidious, corrosive effect on our inner well being. Gradually and surely, they undermine our inner peace, deprive us of mental freedom, and hinder the expression of our empathetic nature, the source of our greatest happiness. In fact, we could even say that all the violence and destruction in the world are the result of hatred. The damaging consequences of hatred can be observed at individual, family, and global levels. So I encourage people to contemplate the destructive nature of such emotions on a regular basis. This is a subject to which I return in chapter 11, where he has the meditations. The next heading, understanding the causes of affliction. Having developed a strong resolve to tackle our destructive emotions, we can then reflect upon their causes. Where do these disturbing emotions come from? Well, we may respond, they come from the world we live in and from others who do us wrong. If it weren't for other people, we may think, we would have no reason to feel aggressive, resentful, or anxious. This response, seeing the source of our problems in external conditions, is a natural one, especially when we are not used to paying attention to our internal mental processes. We tend to see the troublemaker as something outside ourselves. If we reflect deeply, however, we discover that the real troublemaker is within us. Our true enemies are our own destructive tendencies. For if the external condition is the real source of our trouble, it follows that if, say, 10 people are confronted with the same external situation, each of them should encounter the same difficulty when faced with that external condition. This, we know, is not the case. The way we react emotionally to any given situation depends to a large extent on our own outlook, our own attitude, and our own emotional habits. And I would say, if going back to the visualization where we took all of the parts of ourselves from this life and the previous lives, these are our own tendencies. These are our habitual propensities that we have developed over since beginningless time, which is why this is such a big task, and why there is so much support for it coming from the Buddhas, coming from the gurus, coming from the Sangha, and why the Dharma is such a good pathway to follow.
I mean, just look at this lifetime
Mhm.
and negative habits and addictions and things like that that we have just accumulated in this lifetime that we're trying to end, and to get all the ones that from eons ago that we don't even have recollection.
That's why we're
Yeah.
throwing ourselves at the mercy of.
Exactly. It's like,
this
oh my
process.
gosh, it's
Yeah.
hard enough to get rid of the ones we know of this
Yeah,
lifetime.
right. Right. I know.
It's just
This is huge. It's a big thing. And
yeah.
I mean, I think we should all be really happy that we are attempting to do this.
Right.
That we have this kind of human life, that there's just the right mix of suffering and non-suffering, where we have a little fire under our butt,
Right.
and so we want to do something. And
The support of our sangha.
Mhm.
I mean, I know the sangha is kind of like, the nuns and the monks,
but it is
even us,
the fellow travelers, yeah.
because when we can do really, really well, and like you said, life happens and it gets in the way, you're not practicing as you would like, it's okay. We're human, and we have each other to then help back, get back on the track, help each other get through.
Mhm.
So it's really great.
Yeah, it is. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's rare,
Right.
It's really wonderful. As part of learning to gain a measure of control over our emotions as a step toward developing a calm mind, it's important that we take a measured and, above all, realistic approach to dealing with the world and the problems we face. Take anger, for example. Is getting angry really a helpful response? If we have a hostile neighbor who constantly provokes us, does getting angry do anything to remedy the situation? What is more, if we allow anger and resentment to fester, they will gradually wear us down, affecting our moods, our sleep, even our appetite. And if this happens, our hostile neighbor really will have won some kind of victory. This is the way of a foolish person, for it is a kind of self-torture. If, in contrast, we can sustain some tranquility of mind, maintain our composure, and carry on with our normal lives, then we will be much better equipped to determine the most effective course of action for dealing with such situations. The truth is that when we are agitated, we are not much good at anything. Even hitting a nail straight can be problematic. Boy, if I had that. All the building we do, and and it can get very frustrating. And I've done stuff exactly like that. It's just like, wow. Upon reflection, then, we start to see that it is a mistake to understand the causes of our disturbing emotions purely in terms of the things or the people who trigger them in us. If we step back and take some time to reflect, we find that even though our grievances may to some extent be legitimate, our feelings of irritation and frustration are actually rather unrealistic and often exaggerated beyond what the actual situation merits. We may also find that such disturbing emotions recur over and over, not just because of external factors, but also because they have become something of an emotional habit for us. Hi, Patricia.
Hi.
Welcome.
Oh, okay. I'm with you.
What's on your leg?
Oh, that's her.
Oh, I
That's
was
her. Oh,
gonna-
she pulled on the bandages. I have to do the
Bad.
bandages every day. She's got some kind of growth. I'm taking her to the dermatologist in a
growth.
couple of days.
Uh,
Yeah, it's okay.
uh,
Do you want? I put some breakfast out there for you if you want to eat it. If you're hungry.
you're trying to get rid of me.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying if you're hungry, you can have it. Or you can stay here. It's fine.
Staying.
Okay.
So you carry your snacks to go. Yeah, well,
Not up to my neighbor.
When we start to see things from this perspective, we can begin to recognize that these destructive emotions feed on themselves, that the more they are indulged, the stronger they become. To realistically address such self-perpetuating destructive emotions, therefore, requires us to turn our attention to our own habits of mind. Instead of looking to blame others and the world around us, we should first look within ourselves. This is a point the 8th century Buddhist thinker Shantideva makes very well when discussing the problem of anger. If we wish to prevent our feet from being pricked by thorns, he says, it would be foolish to attempt to cover the whole world in leather. Much easier and more effective is to cover the soles of our own feet. In the same way, it is a mistake to think we will get rid of anger by changing everything in the world that makes us angry. Instead, we should look to change ourselves. What anger most depends on for its perpetuation is our own inner dissatisfaction, the state of latent irritation or lack of contentment, in which Tibetan we call yi mi dewa. It is this general underlying mental unease which makes us susceptible to the triggering of destructive emotions, especially anger. Such inner dissatisfaction is the fuel upon which destructive emotions such as anger and hostility depend. Therefore, just as extinguishing the initial sparks is a more effective method of preventing fire damage than waiting until the fire is blazing, in the same manner, dealing with the underlying causes of discontent is a more effective way to prevent destructive emotions from doing damage than waiting until the emotions become full blown. So it's kind of nip it in the bud.
I have a question, kind of. So as I try to get down to the root of my emotions and where they come from. As you know, obviously we have a propensity towards why we react the way we react. And something that I've learned about myself is, and I think I've always had this, even from a small child, is, and maybe lifetimes ago, injustice. And stay with me for a second on this. I find it really difficult to accept injustice when I see somebody being cruel to another person, or blatantly being cruel to me, or just I guess I would consider it kind of inappropriateness of treatment from one human being to another. And I've learned that that's what really triggers me into the cycle of thinking, into the cycle of anger and frustration. And so I continue to struggle with reconciling that and understanding that and how to overcome that, because it's so constant in the world that we live in and everything we see. I'm just wondering if anybody else feels this way and has any suggestions on how to approach that, because I feel like I don't really know where to go from there.
Yeah, I'm going to just say that until I started practicing Buddhism, I just felt this constant irritation and horror about the circumstances of the world. But it was actually a realistic recognition that I am in a realm where most beings are dominated by their afflictive emotions. So by definition, I'm living in a sphere because of my own propensities, where mainly what I'm noticing is other beings also trapped in the cycle of their afflictive emotions. And so it would be unrealistic to expect, when I look out into the world, to see anything other than the display of results from people acting from afflictive emotions. It's not meant to be, permission to not care about it. What it is a reminder now to me that, yes, I really have been born into a lifetime in a realm that is dominated by suffering. That's not just some cute little Buddhist saying. That is a fact. And so the angst and the misery, mental misery that I had felt has actually been lessened by the realistic recognition that, okay, it would be sort of like saying, I've been thrown into prison and how horrible, I hate this prison. This prison, there's so much injustice in this prison. These prison guards are so mean, and the food is terrible and the circumstances are awful. Well, that's our situation. And so what we have to do, the remedy, is ultimately, once we get to be mature in our understanding of where we are at, why we see this shit, then we go, shit, I really need to become a Buddha, because if all I'm doing is adding to the misery level through my own emotional response, that's just going to deepen the impossibility of this cycle of suffering to ever lessen for the beings. So let me just work on my getting enlightened. And wow, what the Buddha said is really true. Suffering is the baseline of this realm, and God damn it, I see it, and that's what it is. I mean, I know that's it's not a solution, but it's a mature recognition that this teachings of the Buddha on suffering and the causes of suffering and the whole pervasive recognition of the realms in terms of you basically reincarnate at the level of where you're at. And so you can see the suffering and you're responding and acting to the suffering and the injustice because you're a being that is still at a level where that's what you see and that's what you get. And your job is to take the long view and get yourself out of it and not add to the misery by getting overwhelmed by the misery that you're witnessing. I mean, it's not and both. It's either or. Either you're digging yourself out of the misery or you're adding to the misery.
Mm, I like that.
There's another
Thank
thing
you.
Geshe Drapa used to say to us all the time when we would complain about problems in the world, things that were going on, things just like you're saying, injustices on really large global levels. And he would always just sort of tilt his head like this and go, samsara. It's sort of like, what don't you understand about the situation we're in here? The best thing that we can do is like Kavita said, is to, as quickly as possible, attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings and help others to do the same. And as the Dalai Lama pointed out, there is the anger that arises due to injustice is not necessarily, it does not have to be destructive. You can take steps to end injustice. You can join certain groups who are, working to end certain kinds of injustices. There are things you can do, but I think it is mature, as Kavita said, to realize it's not going to be solved at the level of the ego.
Well, that was the whole point
Yeah.
of Shanti David.
Yeah.
You can't put
Yeah.
leather on the whole
That's
world.
right. That's right.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a very good observation. It's a good question, and and you're right. You're right to be frustrated and triggered by that.
I mean, I really did feel a sense of hopelessness and overwhelmed by the degenerate nature of the world until it took a long time, and I'm still not, I still hope someday to see happy news stories in the news feed,
Right.
but
It just seems to be getting worse.
Again, part of this is just learned and recognized on a very mundane level. You go to work and, you find yourself complaining about the selfishness of your coworkers and the infighting and the quote, office quote politics and all that crap. And you really have to just step back and go, oh, what do I expect when I'm incarnated in a realm where people are dominated by the afflictive emotions and dominated by, just dominated by their, what we call the 8 worldly dharmas, their lust, their wants. They don't want everybody wants what they want, and they don't want what they don't want, and they have no pervasive, insightful wisdom to guide them out of the continual behaviors and you can see it's a range. Some people are mildly destructive and some people are terribly destructive. And, but probably from a Buddha, we all kind of look about like at the same bandwidth.
Well, and that is the purpose of the Dalai Lama's teaching here is to help us. So I will continue now. And this heading is called Emotional Awareness. If we are to succeed in effectively tackling our destructive tendencies, first of all, we must observe and study them closely. For dealing with destructive propensities is not merely a matter of suppressing them. Our emotional and psychological habits can be very deep-seated and often have developed over the course of many years. So if we do not address such emotions honestly but bottle them up, this can potentially have very counterproductive effects. In fact, ignoring or suppressing emotions can actually aggravate them and make them intensify until they surge to the surface and, like a swollen river bursting its banks, find expression in unexpected negative thoughts and behavior. Instead of suppressing our destructive emotions, therefore, we must be open and honest with ourselves and bring mindful awareness to what triggers them, how they make us feel, and what kind of behavior they provoke. This kind of introspective attentiveness to the way these emotions arise within us and manifest in our behavior is what I call emotional awareness. It is only by practicing such awareness, by facing these emotions directly and giving them careful scrutiny, that we can gradually bring them under control. Here again, it's worth considering our behavior in terms of the three dimensions at the levels of body, speech, and most important, mind. If we can maintain introspective attentiveness to these three aspects of our experience and behavior, then we can, by stages, develop an emotional awareness which will be very helpful in restraining our negative impulses. The next heading is attentiveness. Attentiveness to emotional experience is very beneficial.
Oh, we're here. Here.
Somebody, somebody has, oh yeah, that's Susie. Can I
Sorry.
Where's her mute?
Participants,
Participants?
and then mute, maybe?
Got it. Yes, I can. There we go. Thank you. Okay.
I think.
No. Well, oh, I muted Kavita instead of Susie. So, no, Susie's not. It's not doing it.
If you right click on the box with her name in it, then
Yeah.
you can mute her.
You can see an icon on the microphone whether they're muted or not.
Yeah, right.
At a glance, if you're looking at the participant.
It does. It's not. She
Oh.
doesn't have.
It's all right. I can do it.
Okay.
I lost the screen for a minute.
Sorry.
Oh, I've lost it again.
Yeah, if you look, there's like 3 little dots in the corner of each
Yeah,
box.
I did. I did it. It doesn't let me do it. I don't know why. Everybody else has one, but this one doesn't. So I don't know why.
I'm special.
You're special, Susie.
I am.
We always knew it. Attentiveness to emotional experience is very beneficial, but at first it's surprisingly difficult to achieve. In fact, trying to identify emotions at the moment they arise may initially seem impossible. In large part, this is because they are simply so swift that in that split second, when powerful emotion arises in us, it seems to occupy all of our consciousness. As a result, the process by which they unfold remains opaque to us. Such difficulties are natural and should not make us feel dejected or discouraged. Instead, we should remember that emotional awareness will only develop gradually with patient perseverance. For this reason, we cannot begin by tackling our emotions directly, but have to start by focusing on their outward manifestations in our behavior. In this context, it's helpful to consider the onset of destructive emotion as a kind of causal chain, which starts with an external stimulus and ends with our behavioral response. The aim of emotional awareness is to bring our attention or mindfulness into this split-second process, and thereby to gain some control over it. Imagine, for example, that a door slams. Next comes our physical perception of that stimulus through the faculties of hearing, sight, and perhaps touch. Initially, this is a purely physical event, not yet colored by any interpretation. But then, less than a millisecond later, comes the interpretation. Here, an element of projection or exaggeration is often involved. The split-second judgment that so-and-so deliberately slammed the door as an insult, for example. Interpretation is very quickly followed by the emotional response, perhaps anger, annoyance, or irritation. Then finally, also often very quickly, comes our behavioral response. We say something or do something in retaliation. Once we understand this causal chain, the aim is to interrupt its flow by, as it were, catching ourselves and bringing awareness into the process. Generally speaking, it is easiest to start near the end, between the emotional reaction and its behavioral expression. Then, as we become more familiar with the process and our emotional awareness develops over time, we can work our way back along the causal chain with the ultimate goal of quelling or eliminating the afflictive emotion altogether. Catching oneself. Thus, our initial efforts should be directed toward ensuring that our destructive emotional responses do not translate into physical or verbal action. The idea is to catch ourselves before we start exploding and to exercise restraint. To help us learn to catch ourselves, it is useful to become familiar with the ways in which our destructive emotional experiences affect us physically. For example, what does it feel like when you first become annoyed? Does your heartbeat change? Do you feel any tightening in the face? Is there any tension in your arms or shoulders? Or what do you feel when you first encounter a sight that disgusts you? Is there any tensing of muscles? Then again, what sensations accompany feelings of jealousy or envy? Perhaps you feel these in your stomach or in your chest. As well as learning to recognize the physical manifestations of our emotions, we can try to observe our physical and mental responses to these sensations. Do we act in a certain way, say certain things, have certain thoughts? Do we clutch at our foreheads or clench our fists? Perhaps we feel an urge to walk or to stand, or maybe just to fidget. Does our voice change when we become agitated? Perhaps the sound becomes louder or shriller of your voice. Do words come quicker to the mind? If we are working or talking when such an emotion arises, how does the emotion affect our work or the content of what we are saying? Paying attention to such details helps us familiarize ourselves with our emotional states, and with greater familiarity, we gain greater control. Often the simple acts of detaching ourselves from these emotional states and examining them help them subside. Once you become quite familiar with this process and begin to have a measure of success in restraining your behavioral responses, you can then move one step back along the causal chain and try to prevent the emotion itself from reaching an explosive stage. In other words, you can learn to calm yourself the moment you become aware of the onset of strong emotion. Doing this may involve, for example, taking several deep breaths, or it may involve simply diverting your mind from the source of irritation. Or you may be able to view a given situation in a more positive light, as in the example of the Palestinian youth who learned to see the image of God in the faces of the soldiers at Israeli checkpoints. Sometimes, even if the actual situation is tragic, looking at it in the context of its multiple causes and conditions can help diffuse strong negative emotional reactions. It is also helpful to view the situation from different angles or perspectives, so that what looks like a tragedy from one angle can also be seen to have positive byproducts. As you become more and more familiar with this approach, you will gradually gain greater mastery to the point at which you may be able to catch yourself before the emotion even arises. By becoming aware of how feelings such as anger, irritation, or annoyance usually arise in you, you can learn to recognize what triggers them and can therefore arm yourself against them by bringing awareness to bear earlier in the process. Eventually, through practice, you can desensitize yourself to the triggers themselves by not allowing an element of projection to distort your interpretation of events. This final stage can be very difficult, but if you can achieve it, it will also be tremendously liberating. For even when you encounter the stimulus, hostile words from another person, for instance, your awareness will guard you against instinctive interpretations which are clouded by exaggeration and projection, thereby enabling you to respond calmly and with discernment. So we'll stop there and go to meditation on, again, this is a meditation on attachment, afflictive attachment. And all of these, I culled these phases of the meditation from all of the words here in this book. So it's sort of like from the Dalai Lama's mouth to our ears, that takes us through this meditation. He suggests that we start before any meditation with a short breathing practice. And this is the breathing practice where we focus our mind on our breath. It's to just sort of get our mind focused on a single thing, and to practice there'll be lots of distractions. We did this a little bit last week, and as I'm sure everybody realized, it's hard to maintain just even focusing on your breath for more than a few seconds, because there's so much stuff going on in our mind. So when these distractions come up, just like a little bell ringing, just bring yourself back to the breath. And we'll only do this for a minute or so. So this, again, have the posture, so that the winds can move properly. You kind of keep your spine as straight as possible. Your chin is a little bit tucked down. Your eyes can either be slightly open or closed. Breathing through your nose. And so just focus your attention, all of your concentration, on the breath coming into the nostrils and the breath going out at the nostrils, right at the point where it goes in and out. And see if you can just hold that for a minute. Okay, now we will go into the meditation on afflictive attachment. First, reflect on the destructive effects of afflictive attachment. Now, you may be a person who feels that your main problem is anger or something else than this afflictive attachment, but attachment is actually running the show. What anger is the response when our attachment doesn't get what it wants. So if you have trouble finding focusing on what your strong afflictive attachment is, then look at where your strongest anger is and what's causing that response. You will find where that strong attachment is. Some of us, attachment can be anything. I mean, you can be attached to having a drink at night. You can be attached to surfing the internet. You can be, it's endless. And I think many of us are familiar with this, but there are those people who they don't feel that same kind of thing. And so by finding what your anger response is, what it's responding to, you will find where your strong attachment lies. First, reflect on the destructive effects of afflictive attachment. Consider how attachment tends to distort your perception of reality. It causes you to narrow your perspective so that you fail to see a given object or situation in its wider context. When you are feeling an extreme form of attachment, such as intense craving, desire, lust, or greed. Often you project an exaggerated level of attractiveness onto the object of your desire, which far exceeds what is really there. You become blind even to quite obvious shortcomings. Take a few moments to reflect on a strong attachment that you have and how you can exaggerate the object of desire. In your obsessive clinging, you create a kind of insecurity in yourself, a feeling that you need to obtain the object of your desire and are incomplete without it. Excessive attachment tends also to involve a desire to control, which can be very suffocating when the object of that desire happens to be another person. Because of this, extreme attachment is by nature quite unstable. One moment you may feel great affection for something or someone, but when, for example, your desire for control is thwarted, this feeling can easily turn to resentment or hatred. You may also find that strong, disturbing attachment recurs over and over, not just because of external factors, but also because it has become something of an emotional habit for you. When you start to see it from this perspective, you can begin to recognize that destructive attachment feeds on itself. The more it is indulged, the stronger it becomes. To realistically address such self-perpetuating destructive attachment, therefore, requires you to turn your attention to your own habits of mind. Instead of looking to blame the object of your attachment, you should look first within yourself. Finally, afflictive attachment fundamentally undermines your capacity to put positive ethical values such as compassion into practice. In addition to being powerfully destructive in moments of intense desire or craving, it can also have an insidious, corrosive effect on your inner well-being. Gradually and surely, afflictive attachment undermines your inner peace, deprives you of mental freedom, and hinders the expression of your empathetic nature, the source of your greatest happiness. Now we move on to the second part of the meditation. Once you are convinced of the destructive nature of afflictive attachment, move on to the next stage of this meditation. Begin by developing a greater awareness of your mental state when you are experiencing extreme attachment, particularly at its onset. Become familiar with the way you feel when strong attachment arises. How does it feel physically in your body? Take a few moments to recollect this. How does it feel subjectively or psychologically? Do you act in a certain way, say certain things, have certain thoughts? What is the stimulus or trigger for your attachment? Learn to recognize these physical and psychological feelings, behavioral responses, and triggers before they start to wreak their havoc. The more accurately you are able to identify the specific characteristics associated with the arising of afflictive attachment, the greater your chance to bring mindful awareness into the process and thus intervene early in the chain of causation. The third stage of this mental cultivation practice for dealing with afflictive attachment is to apply its antidotes. First, contemplate the imperfections of the object of your desire. When you remove your exaggerated projection of attractiveness from the object, what is really there? Have you been blind to some obvious shortcomings? Next, begin to cultivate the practice of contentment, or more specifically, the absence of craving. By setting reasonable limits, you free yourself from the sense of insecurity and insufficiency born of incessant craving. By practicing contentment, you allow yourself to rest in an underlying state of satisfaction, confident in the knowledge that you are living by the ideals you seek to uphold. By limiting your wants and desires, you avoid suffering the dissatisfaction and frustration which afflictive attachment generates. Happiness comes not from indulging our desires, but from setting limits on our desires and living within those limits with satisfaction. The suggestions in this meditation are offered in the sincere hope that they can provide help and guidance for those of us who want to learn to overcome our own difficulties and to lead fulfilling ethical lives oriented toward the long-term benefit of both self and others. Okay, and now I think we can do closing prayers. Let me see if I can find this on my.
My object of attachment was kind of wanting to have. I don't mean this in the big sense of control, but control of situations. So let's say I'm in the kitchen cooking and someone comes in and starts messing around. That was the nature of my object of attachment. It was interesting to apply all that to that. Yeah, it wasn't like I'm attached to a car or sex or a sex toy or anything like that. It was like I was attached to.
Good to know.
I was just being ordered.
Twice there.
Car or sex or sex toy.
Did I mention sex
Sexy and sex.
toy?
Sex toy, yeah.
Then well, twice now.
Okay, well, what was your point though?
It's just sort of interesting to not have, I mean, I was found because my triggers are mostly about when things are not unfolding the way I envisioned them unfolding.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm
That's the
attached.
whole deal. If you expect them not to unfold the way you want them to, then when they do, that's great. When they don't, that's normal.
There
That's
it is.
samsara.
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
All right, let's see if I can share this.
Right, there it is.
Okay,
Easy to say.
now
Right.
where are we? Where am I on Zoom? Sorry, guys.
It doesn't matter. You can just guide us through.
All right, I'll
some
just guide you
thoughts.
through. All right.
It's
Did
the
you find
thoughts, it's not the words.
It's the thoughts. So what we're going to, I can't even find them.
Just get the thoughts.
I'll get
Be
the
more
thoughts.
potent anyway.
Okay. So due to the merit of anything we've done here, the positive potential in ourselves that we're growing together as fellow travelers or along this pathway to enlightenment, may we soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that we may liberate all sentient beings from suffering. And then this prayer is in Tibetan. It's saying, may the precious Bodhi mind, the mind that aspires for enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, may that mind not yet born arise and grow, and may that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And I want to add here another one, which is similar, but it has to do with the view of reality, the view of emptiness. May the view of emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow, and may that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Some of you know these and you can sing along.
You just said it.
But Tibetan, we'll close it out with the Tibetan song.
All right.
Okay. Jang chup sam chorim poche ma ke panam ke gyuchi ke panyam pa me pa yang gong ne gong du pe war shuk tong ye tawa rinpoche ma ke panam Kye gyuchi, kye panyam pa, me payam, gong ne gong du, pe wa shu. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Christopher.
Wherever you are, I've lost my picture.
Look for where your programs are, down right here.
Yeah.
And the blue camera, click on, nope, that blue
That
camera,
one.
click. And then
Hello, all right. I found you all. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. Sorry for my technical difficulties.
They were mine.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It was a beautiful morning.
Great seeing you all. Great seeing you all.
Yep.
May we all continue together in this and find ourselves liberated, happy, and on our way to enlightenment. Okay.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Christopher. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye. Bye, Susie.
Bye.
Bye, Suze.
Bye.
Bye.
Adios.